Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. Hey there, Seekers and Shifters. It's Michelle, your hostess with a mostest, and I am so excited to be here with my friend, Brook Bishop, today.
Hello.
Hey, Brook.
What's going on?
Brook, do you want to just introduce yourself for our friends?
I'm the bald guy. No, my name is Brook Bishop. I'm pumped to be here in this conversation. My world comes from the world of personal development and getting outside your comfort zone. So I'm excited to dig into today's episode because that's kind of what this is all about, right?
That's what it's all about. This is the inaugural episode of Seekers and Shifters, where we are going to be interviewing all kinds of weirdos about all kinds of weird shit. And so you are the first weirdo. How excited are you about that?
I feel honored to be the first weirdo, and yeah, I think it's fitting because I feel like my whole life I've felt like out of place, or like, where are my people? Where's my group of humans that want to push the envelope and be weird as well? So I guess if everyone was weird, I guess we wouldn't be weird. But.
That's right. That's right. So it's a badge of honor, and when I say weirdo, that's a compliment coming from me. Like, all the best people are the weirdest people, in my opinion. So you and I have been working on a little project called Seekers Club, which is our little club for weirdos. And it's already off to a great start. So tell me why you wanted to do this with me, or like what about the Seekers Club concept even resonated with you?
Yeah, no, honestly, it's, the growing up, it's like, oh, do you sit at the cool kids table? Like, I think if we can change the narrative, it's like, oh, do you get to sit at the weirdos table?
Yeah.
Like that, let's make that the cool thing. But no, from day one, since you and I connected, there was this higher frequency of conversation.
Yeah.
How's that for a mouthful?
Ooh.
Higher frequency of conversation. But no, there was this element of not having to tone down or dumb down the conversation or hide our gifts or pretend to be something we weren't. Like, right out of the gates, you and I are like, here's who we are. Yeah. It was like, and there was no judgment, but it was just really this conversation of, let's just be real and let's talk about cool shit. Let's talk about stuff that's like, let's talk about quantum physics, and let's talk about the collective. And what if we could have a party where everybody wanted to talk about it?
Would be the best party ever. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it was born. You and I joke around a lot about the fact that we're both 42. And why I think that's significant to this conversation is because we've both gotten to a point in life where, you don't really, you run out of fucks in your 40s, right? Like, you get to a point where you're like, you know what? I don't need to hide who I am. I'm just going to be who I am. And hopefully we have some seekers and shifters who are in their teens or 20s listening to this. We think that's cool as hell. But for some of us, it took us a little bit longer to kind of get around to being fully expressed. For me, I've always had like a corporate professional career in politics, which is a very buttoned up industry in certain ways. And so I've been a little bit sheepish about this. You, on the other hand, you've kind of always lived in this space. So you worked for Tony Robbins for a long time. When did you get into personal growth and development? When did you start being comfortable being weird?
So what else can I tell you about the third grade? This will be a long episode.
It all started when I was 7.
It kind of did. I was 6. So my parents, so I'll give you the really short backstory. When my parents split, I was an only child, and my dad remarried a woman that had 6 kids, and he became a pastor.
Okay. What kind of pastor?
So at that point, it was fundamental Baptist.
Oh, okay.
So it was hardcore.
Yeah.
So overnight, I became the bastard middle stepchild of 7. So there's a little bit of culture shock there.
Yeah.
And then my mom, on the other hand, she remarried an atheist nudist artist.
Oh.
So, and I was an only child there. So I literally had bipolar upbringing from the time I was 6.
I can't imagine why they split up.
Me neither. Who knew? The fascinating piece with it was because of the crazy that came with that. I really had to get clear of like, well, what do I believe and what's important to me and how am I going to live my life? Because no matter where I went, I was being told I was wrong.
Yeah.
And so within that, my uncle actually is the one who really stepped in, who right? So my uncle, his name's Mark. I'm actually writing a book, by the way, called Uncle Mark. But
really?
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, he's worthy of a book for sure.
He is. So he's just a crazy human being. But he saw I'll say a light within me that he wanted to be there to foster and to cultivate, because he saw that in the crazy of my world of upbringing, he's like, hey, he didn't want me to get lost in the shuffle. And through that, he pushed me out of my comfort zone, and we would go do free diving, or we'd go jump off of, the pier in San Clemente, or we'd go on these, like when I was really little, we'd go on these pirate adventures and we'd try and go find things in caves and just cool random things. So in his training for the Navy SEALs is actually when I got first exposed to personal development, because we shared a room and I was on the top bunk, he was on the bottom bunk, and he'd be listening to Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor and these different people on the cassette player back then. That's how far back it was. And in that, through osmosis, I really got to learn a lot about predominantly, mainly Tony Robbins was who we listened to a ton. And then I got a chance to go work for Tony many, many years later. So
can you just go back to talking about Mark and Navy SEALs training and what he was listening to?
Yeah. So when I was quite young, Mark and I actually shared a room together. So he's about 16 years older than me. And so I had the top bunk, he had the bottom bunk. And in his preparation for going into the SEAL program he was listening to cassettes, and he would be listening to Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, different people in the personal development space. And me as a little kid, I got to just listen because I was in proximity to it. I got to pick up on a lot of that content, which was somewhat fortuitous because later in life, I actually ended up going to work for Tony Robbins. And actually for 15 years, I got to work with Tony, which was pretty cool.
That's amazing. And RIP to our friend Bob Proctor, who life-changing. I cried when I found out he had passed on. I can't say that about many famous people, but just wanted to give a quick shout out to Bob. So I want to hear about working for Tony Robbins. Now, Tony Robbins has been a little bit of a controversial figure. Obviously, we love a lot about Tony Robbins. We've also seen in recent years some kind of not so nice stories coming out about Tony Robbins early in his career, and maybe some of the ways that he was using NLP. In predatory ways. I get a little defensive of NLP. I don't know about you, but I love NLP. I'm a trainer of NLP. It's changed my life. It's changed my clients' lives. And there's this other side to it where you hear a lot of, NLP is used to manipulate people. It's used to sell people things they don't need. And then in an extreme, like with the stuff that's come out about Tony Robbins, it can be used to really exploit people in harmful ways. I hate that. I hate hearing that. I want to know what your take on it is, on him and on it in general.
Yeah, and I had a unique look at things too, just because I was behind the scenes when a lot of the Me Too stuff popped and the BuzzFeed stuff started to run. It's so interesting. And I think this is the case with any tool, right? Like you can take a hammer and it can build somebody a home, but that same hammer, you could murder people with it, right? Yeah. So the intention behind the tool that's being used, I think, is always the most paramount piece of the puzzle. And that was what I got to witness with Tony in terms of seeing the pieces that are there. And I did get to see behind the scenes, and I was at the table. I mean, I was at his house every couple months, I was that close to him in that space. So the intention behind how you're using the tool is everything.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that when it comes to NLP, are there people that are out there, you look at the pickup artist,
oh God.
there's a lot of that. And I do think there's a lot of jacked up predatory usage of the tools. And I also think that there's so many people that get healed of lifelong trauma from using those same tools. So I think it really comes down to who's using the tool and in what way and for what reason. And just like anything else, right? Is there, are people giving permission to have that tool be used?
Yeah. And I do want to be respectful. Obviously, there's probably things you do and don't want to say in a public forum. So to your comfort level, did you think Tony was using it in the wrong ways early in his career? Did you think that got misinterpreted somehow?
No. And here, so this is the part that the public doesn't get to see. So anytime he's running an event, he has to rent out the entire floor of that hotel, and he has security on that floor because, we see rock stars, you look at, think of, did you ever read the Motley Crue book?
No. Should I?
Oh, girl. Okay. Go read Motley Crue's book this weekend.
Put it on a list.
So there's a rock star syndrome that happens with him. And I literally watched women throw themselves at him on the regular. Mm-hmm. And for him to have to navigate and maneuver through that and have literally create barriers to protect from the drama. Mm-hmm. Even as somebody who was an employee, I had to have massive amounts of boundaries because there's a rock star syndrome in that space. And for him, I didn't see him ever use those tools for nefarious purposes. Um, as far as going back to where some of the claims of like early in his career, I wasn't obviously there during that window, so I can't speak to it. But what I can speak to is when I was there and the claims that were made about him using it at events and something along those lines. It was never for those purposes, and stuff always got cut. Like you'd see a video clip. It's like, well, you're missing 8 hours of content before it gets spliced on the other side, and you take it completely out of context of where it's at, and you miss the whole other half of the dialogue. And you being a political analyst or
political consultants, when we're making ads, obviously you take sound bites and you put them in the context that you want to put them in to create the message that you want to create, and that's kind of part of the job. I'm a huge reality TV nerd, by the way. I could have a whole other podcast just about that. Obviously, we know about Frankenbiting in reality TV, where if you're not watching their mouth move, like they could have said it in any other context, and they're putting it together and they're creating a storyline and a narrative. But what I'm more interested in is, Brooke, is you were getting some rock star runoff. They were throwing themselves at you too.
No, I mean, for me, I actually met my wife in the world of personal development. So thank God. But no, now what I will tell you is there's definitely people that I saw in that space that they played that to their advantage.
Yeah.
There was one event. So can I talk about this?
Come on, we want to know the secret.
Okay. So I won't lay names. I won't say where it was, and I won't say actually which person in personal development was at, but there was a particular event that happened that company is no longer allowed to go back to that hotel because at the end of a specific day, they basically it broke out into like a full orgy. So
I'm sorry, I missed it.
A ton of the members got busted in the stairwell at that hotel. And because there was a lot of people that worked for that company, and because, we'll just say it got freaky, and now they're not allowed to go back.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you heard it here first. It gets weird sometimes. In fact, we're going to be going there on this podcast a little bit with talking to people that do tantric retreats and everything else, right? Like we're going to bring that in because that is a part of the personal development space. And what I'm interested in exploring there is where is that healthy, right? Like all of this, where are we working for light? Where is this positive? Where is this healthy versus a lot of these things that can be used kind of in these dark ways or in these exploitative ways. And that's where personal development and cult starts to
I want to double click on that because I think this is really important, right? Because you asked about NLP. Well, can NLP be used for good or for evil? Yes.
Yeah.
Can sex be used for good or for evil?
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this dynamic of like there's of course now I'm going to space on the words for it, but it's sex as an ascension tool, right? Yeah. Like there was ascension schools, and there was we have all these things that used to be done in specific ways for very specific reasons that have all been, whether they've been inverted or whether they've been labeled taboo or whether we've pushed them into the corners and we're not allowed to talk about them. Like screw that, like pun intended. But there's this that was, I think, for me, what was such an appealing thing with this concept of the Seekers Club is being able to talk about these elements that are taboo when in reality it's like, wait, is there a use? Is there a tool? Is there something that we can grow and learn from in those conversations? Are there people that are in our orbit that we can bring to the forefront and talk about these things for the purposes of elevating consciousness, not for the purposes of manipulating another person or for being a pickup artist because you just want to get laid on Friday night. Like, no, let's put the dark stuff to the back of the bus, but let's look at the tools and how they can really play.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings drugs into the equation too, which, yes, we're going to be talking about plant medicine and that sort of thing here on this show and in Seekers Club. A lot of drugs that are outlawed, there would be people who would say the government doesn't want you to go there because you might get too powerful or you might know too much if you start to take these types of hallucinogenic drugs. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Episode 2, Brook's Conspiracies. Now, I'm a firm believer that if it can open up consciousness, I also believe, we'll just say this. Yes, yes, and yes. I also believe that through our own breath, we can get there. I also think that if you can use something that grows naturally on this planet, if it's growing, whether we call it God, a higher power, whatever his or her name is, whatever we want to throw a label on, if it's here, there's a reason for it.
Mm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can unlock and access different parts of ourselves for the purposes of elevating ourselves or others, heck yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there are different categories, and just I know enough about energy work at this point in my path to know there are drugs that open it up, and there are drugs that shut it down. Uh, all drugs aren't created equal. Alcohol is not going to do anything for you in terms of elevating your consciousness. At least not for me. Maybe for somebody else. That's not going to open up the path. There are other substances that you can take that are going to you're going to have up to even spiritual experiences. I've had people say, I took this thing and I saw God. I've tried to be really careful and not name specific substances in this just because I don't know. But yeah, I definitely think that's something that we want to always be talking about and exploring too. We want to be open-minded to, without sounding like a conspiracy theorist, what's outside the system. My superpower, Brooke, is curiosity. My whole life, I've looked at it and said, okay, that's the rule, but why is that the rule? Is that a rule that's going to, for better or for worse, right? Is that a rule that I want to accept? And is that a rule that I want to follow? I've never been someone that just kind of blindly followed authority, blindly followed the rules. I'm always questioning who made the rule and why did they make the rule? Not just what's the rule.
And that's why we get along, by the way. We like to buck the norm. But yeah, I mean, the power, I think, is it's so, the answers are in the question. And so the fact that you're a strong questioner, right? So staying in that space of curiosity, my personal belief is that we're either in one of two states. It's either curiosity or criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that as kind of a core ethos of the Seekers Club, like you can't be a seeker and be critical. Like that's going to be pretty challenging to do, because that just means you're judging everything, yourself and everything else around you or whatever's there. And so living in this space of curiosity, you as the captain of the helm, right, in this space of curiosity and seeking, I'm excited to see everything that comes out of this. Because to flip that around on you, what prompted you to want to create this community, and what prompted you to want to bring seekers into a safe space?
Oh, just pure unadulterated selfishness. I wanted it to exist and it didn't exist. I was finding that I was starting to, as I was getting further and further into my personal development journey, and I was going all the way down the rabbit hole, I would start to share some of that on my main social media feeds and things like that. And I got a lot of snark. I got a lot of pushback. Obviously at this point in my 40s, I've collected people from all walks of life, all the way from high school, college, grad school, politics, like everywhere. So there's just all these people I met at weddings, one time or whatever. It's like all these random people. And some people would be like, oh, cool, I want to learn more about that, or let's talk about that. But there was always somebody in there that was like, okay, Marianne Williamson, eye roll, or, oh, you got your magic rocks, or you got, and it was just like, that just kind of kills the vibe. And it's like, look, I don't, everyone's got their own worldview. I don't judge other people who think it's stupid. But where I come from is that just logically, we can't possibly know all science right now. And I think it would be ridiculous to feel like we already knew everything there was to know scientifically. And so just because there's not a scientific explanation for something now doesn't mean that there isn't one, or that it doesn't exist, or that it's not real. And I feel like so much of that shutdown energy comes from like, oh, science up to now hasn't defined that. And so it's just bullshit. And I hate that. So I wanted to create a space without that element, just so that we could all dive down the rabbit hole and nerd out together. We just launched this a few days ago. It's already happening. We were having a fascinating conversation about human design in there already. And I just love that we can all just kind of chip in and go nuts. Some people know more than others, without somebody coming in and just being like, all y'all are stupid for even talking about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I think that I think we've been fed a plate of bullshit in terms of thinking like life is linear.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I'm on a different chapter than you, or I'm further ahead of you, or I'm behind you, or something of that nature. It's like, wait, where did this linear thinking come into play? And I think that that's part of the magic here. It's like if somebody read a book and they got a golden nugget from that book, like, cool, I want to know about that experience, because that could play in at a different point in time, or my own journey and my own expansion. and having a space where, human design as a killer tool, if people aren't familiar with it, go get your human design done. But, just figuring out who you are and how you perceive the world, or how you function, or where your gifts can play at a deeper level, that there's so much magic in that. So thank you for kicking this thing off and creating a space for it.
Hey, absolutely. And, to that point, one of the reasons that I've always loved Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins, and there's a whole group of guys from the 30s that I'm just obsessed with, like Joseph Murphy, you know what I mean? Why I have loved listening to that stuff, and since we need a shout out to a lady, Esther Hicks, on the Abraham Hicks side. Why I love listening to this stuff is because for years and years and years, I can listen to it over and over and over, and I always get something different, because where I'm at on the path is different. How I feel that day is different. An experience that I've had is different. I can listen to that stuff 100 times, 1,000 times. I'm hearing something new every single time. So of course I want to hear what somebody else got out of it, or how they intersected with the material. These aren't like, none of this stuff is just like, I read it one time and now I got it. It's not academic like that.
And every time you think you've got it, you don't have it.
Oh, every time you think you're further on the path, the universe shows you where you really are.
It's funny you bring up Esther Hicks too, because I remember when The Secret first came out. For anyone who's seen The Secret, the version that actually got promoted, Esther wasn't included in that. But originally, that whole series was actually supposed to be around her and her content. And contractually, everything went sideways, and then she got pushed out. And that's actually when they brought in Bob Proctor into it. It's wild, because I've actually gotten to meet or work with pretty much every single person that's featured in there just through the course of time, which is wild. But some incredible human beings in that space. And that actually, I think, is the cool factor or the geek, where we get to geek out, is bringing those types of people into this type of a space. We're right before we came on to record this episode, I was on a separate Zoom with somebody that we'll be bringing into this space. It's like, okay, you got to see some of the stuff I got to do a couple months ago with being able to see blinded.
Oh,
right?
I'm so excited to talk about Vibrovision. Can we just say it's Vibrovision? It's Vibrovision. Yeah. I'm so excited to talk about this with you. You learned how to do puzzles with blindfold. Like, what all were you doing in there? It was some weird shit. And
this is just the fun stuff we get to go do, but Mass Mike Zeleznik. So he was basically went and lived with the Indonesian royal family, and they trained him up in the ways of the wizard as well as in the ways of the warrior. And one of the things that they taught him is basically how to see blindfolded. So part of his training is he had to run, I don't even know how many miles it was, but it was in the middle of the night, running through the jungles of Indonesia to the top of a volcano and back, blindfolded by himself.
Crazy.
Right? And so then he had to fight blindfolded, and he had to do all this, not only just blindfolded, but also barefoot across volcanic rock. So like when you start to think of the dynamics of that, like, I don't know if you've been to Indonesia. Last time I went there, I had to get rescued out of the ocean, but it's a crazy, crazy place. So just to think of like going into the jungles of Indonesia, like, I don't know, it's wild, but nonetheless, he has a whole program and he teaches you how to see energy. It's the closest thing I can equate it to. Did you see the Matrix movies?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So the last one where he has his eyes, where he's blinded and he sees everything in like golden light. Yeah. That's what it's like.
That's so cool. I'm doing this, by the way. I'm really excited to do this. Mostly we're just here to like sell each other personal development program. Like Brook cost me so much money. I'm just going out and being like, I did this cool thing. You gotta go do it. And I'm like, shit, I gotta go do it too. I am curious though, because you have, like you said, you've worked with or been around all of these different personal development gurus. You've learned all of these tools, decades and decades. You've been exposed to all of it. What are some of the practices that you have really taken out and that you swear by? What do you do every day?
Opening up Pandora's box with that. One that I'll say, so something that I learned from Tony, he calls it prime time. So it's his priming time. So whether you call it a morning routine, I don't like calling it morning routine. So I'm really big on languaging things and just the foundation of words. So I don't like calling it morning, because where else do we mourn? It doesn't usually how I want to start my day off. Right. So I don't call it morning time. So I call it my prime time. My morning routine, my prime time, is about a 2-hour experience of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it has one part red light therapy. There's another part. I don't know have you heard of MMS?
No, what is it?
As long as we're not putting this on YouTube, we won't get banned.
It's on YouTube, so be careful.
We're screwed. Miracle Mineral Solution, so MMS. So if you check that out, cured malaria and a bunch of other craziness. And we'll just leave it at that. I'll let people do their due diligence. Coffee enemas. So I do a whole sequence of things with red light therapy, coffee enemas, breath work, microdosing, just a bunch of other different pieces to the puzzle. And that's all the first part of the experience.
Wait,
then that goes
wait. You do a coffee enema every day?
Yep. Every day, have for 8 years.
Okay. I have more questions, but that's probably a whole other episode. We should have the coffee enema people on. I want to know I've never done a coffee enema. In fact, the only time I've done any kind of enema, just for the whole world to know, is after childbirth when you have to.
That wasn't my reasoning, but yes.
Sometimes it's the only way to get things moving again after you've had a baby. The ladies know. Sorry, Brooke, but you're doing this every single day. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly. All right, so that's just the first part of the routine, and then what happens?
Yeah, so the other part then goes into breath work, and then I've woven a lot of the vibrovision. There's a lot of guided meditations and a lot of energy work to get all of your energy centers activated and actually charging up that energy cable. So before I even go into my normal day, I'm doing everything I can to get my physical system, my breathwork systems, my energetic systems, not only detoxing and getting the bad stuff out, but also getting all of the energy centers loaded up and charged up so that I can be at my best for my clientele. So I do all of that as a way of serving myself first so that I can then go out and serve others.
Another little hiccup there in the recording. So we're going to start back onto after after the colon stuff. What do you do?
Yeah. So my morning routine is there's this element of first it's getting all the toxins and bad stuff out, let's just say. So there's one part of the coffee enema, there's the MMS piece. I'm also doing red light therapy to trigger and stimulate the system in different ways. Then I'm also doing a series of breath work and guided meditations and physical movements to charge up my system so that I'm at optimum. And so that, every day it's a 2-hour process of just really getting into that space. And I get up early so that I can take care of myself, so I can take care of others. Yeah,
I love that. And me too. And I have really become an evangelist of take care of yourself first. I mostly train entrepreneurs. That's my day job. I train entrepreneurs. And I struggle with getting a lot of my clients on board with you have to take care of yourself and get yourself in the right state of mind and get your mind right before you can get your grind right. So many of my clients, especially coming out of politics, et cetera, the very first thing they do when they open their eyes, they grab their phone, they start answering emails. They grab their phone, they get right into it. Sometimes when they're busy, there's no eating, there's no, they're trying to get their kids ready while they're answering work emails or while they're on a phone call. And there's no time to just stop and take care of yourself. Now, when you are a boss, this causes a ripple effect because now you're not showing up your best self. Now you're a little snappy with somebody. It causes, your employees are worried about whether they're going to get fired. Your client took something the wrong way. So even from a practical standpoint in business, it's a real bad idea to just go raw into your day before you've taken care of yourself. But it takes a long time for people to kind of come around to this idea of, oh, I really need to take this hour out. I need to take these 2 hours out. You get your people that know that they need to work out maybe, or don't talk to me until I've had my coffee. This is just that plus, right? I'm over here. Don't talk to me till I've done my energy clearing, Don't talk to me till I've done my Ho'oponopono with everybody every single day that I ever came across, right? But
I think it brings up that question of how much of ourselves do we really want to bring to each day and each moment, right? For a lot of times we get into autopilot where it's just like we're just going from one thing to the next and we're just trying to earn a paycheck to pay our bills to die. When you make a different commitment of I'm going to live a life of purpose and I'm going to live a life that's mission driven and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to bring the best of myself to each of those pieces, then you really start looking at, okay, well, what am I doing? How am I going after this? And I think that really hooks into like, who is Seekers Club for?
Mm-hmm.
It's for the people that, it's not for people that want to dabble or want to be status quo or want mediocrity. I mean, it really is for people who want to play at a higher level, who want to do things in a very different way.
Well, I think what we're talking about really is being intentional. Being intentional with your life, being intentional with your goals, being intentional with who you are and reaching your highest purpose, and how you're being intentional going into each day. You know, they say how you do anything is how you do everything. How you live your day-to-day life is how you live your life. And we're really also talking about being associated into your experience versus being dissociated from it. We spend the first however many decades of our lives dissociating. We figure out, oh man, life is stressful. Life is hard. My career is getting harder. I have kids now. That obviously like brings in lots of elements. It's stressful. My marriage is stressful. Trying to take care of my body, trying to juggle all this stuff at once. And so what happens is people start to dissociate. How can I have that glass of wine at the end of the day, or have that scotch? How can I just smoke a bunch of weed before I go to bed every night? You can even dissociate through exercise. Right? Or just that, hey, in order to be professionally successful, I need to put aside everything that I think and feel and just do it. As women, we're taught, hey, wash your face, get back in there. There's no crying in the office. All of these different ways. And men, oh God, we can't, that's a whole episode. How men are taught to dissociate from their feelings from a very young age. I have 2 boys. And it starts when they're in, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. They start getting teased by the other boys if they're showing too much emotion. So there's only so much, at home, hey, it's okay to cry. At home, at school, it's still not okay. So we're all trained. I'm from Oklahoma. It was suck it up, buttercup, rub some dirt on it, shake it off, put your big girl panties on and get back on the horse, So we learn how to dissociate. And then we get to this point in middle age where we go, wait a second, I don't even know who the fuck I am anymore. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like. I've checked all these boxes in my life and I'm not fulfilled. And I feel like I have a hole in my soul. And that's where you see people going off sometimes in really destructive ways. Oh, maybe I just need to go get into a different relationship or a whole series of relationships. Or maybe I need to, go. This is the classic midlife crisis. Or you have this direction where you go, wait a second, I need to start to explore a little deeper. And so we're here for the people who are ready to start to explore a little deeper, and the people who are asking, is that all there is? And it starts with, how can you get associated to what's really going on? Now, Brooke, that's not super fun at first. You know that. With all these people that you've seen.
It depends on how far down the hole you are.
Well, the people who are coming to unleash the power within for the first time, the people who are really coming and this is their first step on the personal growth and development path, you're going to see a lot of people really breaking down because they're really going to, for the first time in a really long time, if ever, get associated into what their actual experience is. And then they go, oh shit. Tell me about that. Tell me what you've seen.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, there's this element of, I love the fact you brought up disassociate, right? Because I think we've been conditioned to not feel.
Yeah.
And whether that's through our food, whether that's through TV, whether that's through, drugs, alcohol, all the above, we've been told we're not actually supposed to feel. If you look at antidepressants, you look at certain medications, it's not that they make you feel good, it's that they just take away the feeling of feeling bad. So we get stuck in this, actually, I'm going to quote Bible. Ooh, check this out. So we've created a lukewarm society.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this element of, we don't have a lot of ice cold or fiery hot. And I truly believe that there's been a push on humanity to not feel as much because we're easier to be controlled. And we don't ask questions. If we feel comfortable, if your thermostat's always at 70 degrees, you're never going to ask, why is it cold or why is it hot? It's comfortable enough. We're not even paying attention to it. Yeah. And so, what I got to witness so much at a massive scale in terms of the volume of humans is a lot of people that really want to feel and they're not sure how to feel, or they've set up so much of their life around just being comfortable, which to me, comfortable equals complacency. Yeah. So if you're comfortable with your finances, whoop-de-doo. If you're comfortable with your physical body, you're not going to change it. If you're comfortable in your relationship, it's flat, it's boring. There's no passion. Yeah. And so from my vantage point, I've just gotten to see a lot of people who got to realize, wait, I actually want the rise and fall in life. I really want to feel at a higher level on the good and on the bad. That's where I see the polarity of life that happens. That's where the magic happens, is when we get to that threshold of, like, even if it's scared, like being scared shitless feels freaking amazing on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And so, myself and my peer group, we've pushed our thresholds of that every year. We intentionally go do wild and crazy things so that we can feel, so we don't get conditioned and fall back into the trap.
Absolutely. It was your Uncle Mark who first taught me comfort is the enemy of your greatness. Love that saying. And it's so true. We are so avoidant of discomfort. And when you think about, all of the move away from and what people are trying to avoid, it's always an uncomfortable feeling versus what if you feel uncomfortable sometimes? A lot of memes on the internet will make the point that you're going to feel uncomfortable either way, choose your hard. And that's true. So why not be intentional about it and lean into the discomfort? When we get into this space of personal growth and development, we're often celebrating the flags that come up because I go, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Oh, there's a little flag there. There's something that I can start to pull on. There's something underneath that. There's something I can learn about myself, discover about myself that's going to make me a better person. Once I explore this, it really is like there's two kinds of people. There's people who want to really take a hard look at themselves. And there's the people who would just rather not. Obviously, it's not super fun for any of us to get to that point where you go, fuck, here's how I've been a real shitbag.
Well, and I mean, how many people really want to look at themselves naked in the mirror and like have an honest conversation about that? And then it's like, okay, if we're that scared at our own physical body, well, what about the emotional body?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, what about our energetic body? Well, what about our history? What about our traumas? What about our identities and labels and all? Like we're walking around as this recipe of disaster,
Yeah.
And there's magic in that if we're willing to take the recipe, take the ingredients out and kind of go, okay, what makes up this thing that's me as this stew that's walking around? Not stew the name, but like
a human stew.
Pot of stew.
I love that IR. Thank you for that. But yeah, and underneath all of that, the spiritual body, right? Which is really what we're trying to get to. How do I intersect spiritually? How am I part of the oneness of everything? When you strip all of these other layers away that have been put on top to kind of block my access to that. And that's kind of, to me, that's the point of life. Right? Humans need to be challenged. We don't get very excited if we're not challenged. I'll tell you this. I grew up very working class, right? And I ended up at grad school at Dartmouth with a bunch of people who did not grow up very working class, and who had lots of family money. Sometimes, generational, most of the time, generational wealth of the people I was in there. I was one of 5 people that was from a state school undergrad. If that gives you any context. Yeah, absolutely. I have all kinds of stories about this. But one of the things that I first noticed, and I love these people, by the way, they busted their asses just as hard as I did to get those MBAs. So like no hate and no shame against people who grew up rich. We've all got our own challenges. And one of the things I noticed that was odd to me, not coming from that background, was how much these people were paying to be uncomfortable. For vacations, they were like, I'm going to go to Patagonia and I'm going to hike up the whatever. And I'm going to go on Outward Bound and shit in a bucket for a week. And I was thinking, gosh, if I had money like you have money, I would spend my week in the Ritz, getting massages or getting, and it took me a while to realize, oh, there's only so much ritzing you can do before you start to get bored. People who have already figured out their money, they go and they do, death-defying adventure stuff. And you see that all the time. I mean, look at the billionaires trying to build rockets and go to they're all trying to race each other to the.
It's funny you bring that one up just because the funny story just popped in my head about Tony Robbins. It was funny because he had just gotten back from, I don't know where the hell he went, somewhere that was very cold because they had a lot of ice. And he was all fired up. And I'm like, where'd you just come back from? And he's like, oh, I just went and I drove a Bugatti on ice, and we just broke it was like some sound, or it wasn't the sound barrier, but it was some speed record on ice that they did in a Bugatti that had ice tires. And I'm like, what? Who does that?
Yeah. The only reason I even know what a Bugatti is because there was a song that came out 10 years ago. I woke up in a new Bugatti, and it was the walk-up song for one of the Washington Nationals.
That's awesome.
So that's the, different worlds that we're coming from. But it kind of brings up a point, and people are gonna bring this up, so we might as well head it off at the pass here. It is a very privileged thing to be able to work on your own personal growth and development. Like, we are acknowledging that out of the gate. We are not saying, oh, we're judging the people who have to ride the bus to go to 3 jobs because they're not going to Tony Robbins seminars. Now, would they benefit if they could get there? Absolutely. And we have to acknowledge that we are able to go and take days off and go to VibraVision or whatever else we're doing because we have our basic needs met. And so, we are really working in the self-actualization part of the Maslow pyramid here. And I just want to say to any haters about that, it's so fucking what? Like, good for us. Because at a certain point, some of us need to be pioneers in that arena and start to explore it.
And I was just going to say, I literally just met somebody last week. They're like, oh, I was just at the local library and Tony Robbins books were there. Mm-hmm. And then I was looking in this, they had a whole basket of stuff that they were giving away, and they had a whole CD collection of Tony Robbins stuff. And I'm like, it's freaking awesome. Like, there's so much of this content that's readily available, and it's on YouTube, and so much of this stuff is at everyone's fingertips. So if you're like, okay, maybe you can't go to a $5,000 event, that's totally cool. But you can definitely go to a YouTube, or you can go to your local library and you can pick this stuff up and you can dig in. So there are those pieces that are out there.
They're out there. And where I want to start with that is that there is always hope and there is always possibility, because I think there's been a narrative, especially the past 10 years of, on both sides politically, by the way, of there's no hope for this or that. And if you're this, you can't this. And I hate that. I am never going to look anybody in the eye and say, somebody's life isn't harder than somebody else's. Sure, we all have different challenges, and there are people who are dealt really tough hands and have a much harder time. I have to work 3 times as hard. Absolutely. And there is always hope, no matter who you are, to better your situation, to better your awareness, to expand your consciousness. And I think we have to hold both of those truths together at the same time. And I feel like sometimes it's one or the other.
But I think that's part of the magic, right? We can choose whose story do we want to focus on in terms of how we relate ourselves to them, of whether it's harder or easier. Like, you get to choose which story you're looking at. Yeah. I think there's a huge piece of that too, from a place of gratitude. Yeah. The people that I've met on the planet that are the most grateful are the ones that have the least in their experience. Like, and from a privileged perspective, in Fiji, right? I got to go sit with like real tribes people that had no running water, no electricity, like literally had warriors at the gate, and they were the happiest people on the planet.
Well, right? There's something to what we were saying earlier, because like, what do the rich privileged people do? Well, they go, they take time off so that they can go in the jungle and sit in Fiji or in Costa Rica with no electricity. It's like, that's what we, at the end of the day, we all go, oh God, I wish I could just live and have all this stress.
And that's the power of contrast, though. That's the beauty of it, right? Where it's like, we can look at it and go, well, I have less or I have more. It's all a matter of what are we comparing our circumstances to?
Yeah.
And that's, I love that you opened up with some of the NLP conversation. Yeah. But there's magic in what we're focusing on, because where focus goes, energy flows. And I think that's a beautiful piece of Seekers Club as the vehicle. Like, we're going to get to bring so many interesting conversations and get to bring so many different points of focus into the fray and into the conversation for people that are going to participate and play.
Absolutely. Where your energy flows, that's where it goes, right? So say it again. I got it wrong.
Where focus goes, energy flows.
Where focus goes, energy flows. I messed up because I've heard it so many different ways, but that's right. And my dear friend Mo, who I coached with for many years, and she used to just say, if you look left, you're going to see what's left. And if you look right, you're going to see what's right.
Love that.
Right. You are always going to find what you are looking for. And we are here for the people who are looking to learn about themselves at the end of the day. That's what this is about. Obviously, we're trying to learn about the universe. We're trying to learn about what works. But this is really a journey of personal growth. This is really about learning about you, learning about who and what you really are, learning about what you are really capable of. And Brooke and I are on the journey with you, right? Like, we're doing the same thing. We're alongside you. Like I said, we don't think we're further along the path or anything like that. We just hope that our paths intersect together for a while so that we can all hang out and learn more about ourselves and each other.
Heck yes.
And with that, thank you so much, Brooke, for being my very first guest on Seekers and Shifters. This has been a fascinating conversation. I feel like we could do 72 more episodes. I want to do a whole episode just about coffee enemas with you at some point.
Let's do it.
But for now, I think this is a good place to end. Thank you so much for everybody watching. We are going to be bringing you the coolest weirdos, the coolest experts in the personal growth and development space. And so, yeah, stick with us and let us know what you want to hear about. We're excited to engage with you.
Rock on. We'll live stream the coffee enema episode.
We're not live streaming it. Thank you, Brooke. And bye, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle.
Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know.